Yeah, I remember, let's see, I met Izzy a long time ago, and I think when he started working on the Hassidic Actors Guild, it introduced me to a whole new world that I had not been aware of until I met him.
My assistant, comes into my office and she goes, John, there's some guy on the phone. It says his name is Izzy Lifshitz. Izzy's name pops up in every circle. Everybody says, Izzy Lifshitz. Oh, yeah, I know Izzy. Where you least expect it. It's sort of like Izzy could be Forrest Gump.
Bert Sugar here at the Miami Beach Convention Center, and I'm pleased to be joined by the world's greatest Hasidic actor.
Izzy's the president of HAG, Hassidic Actors Guild, which is I think they just got their charter from SAG.
Where do you think Izzy belongs in the pantheon of film?
Somewhere between Woody Allen and Bruce Willis.
Izzy's very kind, and ambitious, loves what he's doing. There's only one problem with it when it comes to pay him. He's so cheap. My God.
One of the greatest challenges I had working with Izzy was taking Izzy to meetings at places like the Four Seasons and the Peninsula. I mean, he just causes a little bit of a stir just by the way he looks.
Well, I believe that Izzy has an obsessive-compulsive disorder. And well, I think it's a combination of OCD and schizophrenia.
Here they come.
One of the more unusual chapters in the history of cinema is the emergence of Yisrael Lifshitz and the Hassidic Actors Guild, an organization created to safeguard Jews in general, and Hasidim in particular, from demeaning characterizations in film and television.
Ready to play? Just about ready. We're ready to.
Some might argue that they had watched from the sidelines for too long. But who were these men in black who came so late to the playing field of popular entertainment? And why did they choose to take part in a game that had gone on for so long without them? For 200 years, Hasidim existed quietly outside of the spotlight, adhering to the same customs and traditions and avoiding scrutiny whenever possible. In the latter half of the 20th century, however, Hollywood, perhaps in search of a new exotic foil, went Hasidic.
The Inquisition. Let's begin.
Director Mel Brooks's send-up of Hasidim in the history of the world is the classic example of the demeaning characterization of Jews in general, and Hasidim in particular. However, there were those who argued that Brooks's view of the Inquisition is the classic self-portrait of the Jew transcending the lunacy of persecution and anti-Semitism, only to wind up laughing at his predicament. According to film historians, the impetus for the appearance of Hasidim in Hollywood productions can be largely attributed to writer-director Woody Allen. In Take the Money and Run, Allen's character, Virgil Starkwell, having no talent for the cello, turns to larceny. Virgil, however, is a complete criminal failure. After being imprisoned, Virgil is offered his freedom if he will participate in a chemical experiment, with startling results. This same Hasidic sight gag reappears in Allen's Academy Award-winning film, Annie Hall. However, this time around, Allen makes a profound statement as to how the world looks at Jews.
It's a nice ham this year, Mom.
It is. It's dynamite ham.
However, more often than not, Hollywood's depiction of Hasidim is strictly a laughing matter. A case in point is The Frisco Kid, starring Gene Wilder. As the Frisco Kid, Wilder portrays a bumbling Hasidic rabbi who is brought to America from Eastern Europe to serve as the spiritual guide for a congregation in San Francisco. During Wilder's journey across America, there are a number of ethnic sight gags, including this encounter with a gentleman from China. But even more humorous is the Frisco Kid's encounter with a group of lookalikes that, in the end, sends him reeling.
Landsman! Gott! Gott! Danken Gott! Danken Gott, also gefunden! Ein finsteren Sach hat mir gefahren. Ich habe gegangen erwarten zu San Francisco. Kannst du verstehen Jiddisch?
Was macht er denn hier?
Spricht der Mann Deutsch?
Nein, das ist nicht Deutsch.
Ja, natürlich.
Does thou speak English?
Does thou speak Eng? Oi, oi, Gewalt!
Hollywood's rush for Hassidic gold got a big boost when Barbra Streisand produced, directed, wrote, and starred in Isaac Bashevis Singer's story of Yentl, the yeshiva boy. Yentl desperately yearns for the exalted world of scholarship. To pursue her thirst for spiritual knowledge, Yentl masquerades as a boy in order to enter the traditional yeshiva environment.
No, Anshel. The whole point of study is to teach us how to live, not only to study.
Why?
Why? Again, why?
While the film does capture the love of learning Torah, the Hasidic community disapproved of Streisand's role, which takes a rather perverse twist. Yentl, now known as Anshel, marries Hadassah, the daughter of the yeshiva's benefactor. Yentl manages to keep her identity a secret from Hadassah, but is eventually compelled to reveal the truth to Avigdor, her friend and secret love interest.
I'm not a yeshiva boy.
That's it. You're the chief rabbi of Lithuania. Am I warm?
I'm not any kind of boy.
What are you doing?
Hollywood's preoccupation with the sexual side of life runs counter to the Hasidic lifestyle. In A Price Above Rubies, the film's disregard for Jewish law and morals stars Renee Zellweger as a Hasidic woman having an adulterous affair with, of all people, her brother-in-law.
But it's the quality of our sins which sets us apart.
Hollywood, in its depiction of religious Jewish life, tends to be somewhat preoccupied with sexuality. It's understandable from a commercial point of view, but it betrays a profound lack of understanding as to what Judaism's attitude towards sexuality is. Sexuality is seen as something very holy, very sanctified, and very private. Within marriage, it's a very holy thing. By the same token, however, Jewish law demands that we have a great deal of self-control and a great deal of control over our emotions, our speech, our behavior. It's very rare to find, for example, public displays of affection in a religious Jewish community. It's very rare to find people discussing these matters in a casual manner, as you see in some of these films.
For Izzy and HAG, serving the needs of Hollywood was always a catch-22. On the one hand, Izzy supplied the bodies, the personnel, the correct garb, overseeing how customs would be properly presented. On the other hand, Izzy felt HAG could not supply the respective films with a soul. There was one exception, however. A Stranger Among Us, Academy Award-winning director Sidney Lumet's glowing portrayal of the Hasidic community. This glow rubs off on Oscar winner Melanie Griffith, an NYPD detective who goes undercover within the Hasidic community in order to find the murderer of a Hasidic diamond merchant. By the film's conclusion, Griffith solves the case, apprehends her woman, and most importantly, has refined her hardened exterior, thanks to her contact with the Rebbe, his son and successor, and their admiring Hasidim. Izzy, who served as one of the film's consultants, is cast in the role of Mazkir, or secretary to the Rebbe. A Stranger Among Us also became a vehicle for Izzy to show off his talents as a Hasidic dancer. Here he is leading a Hasidic conga line.
Now he's an expert on piping.
Hasidim were often exploited for humor, but sometimes Hollywood went too far. Rob Reiner incurred the wrath of the late Gene Siskel with his film North, in which a Hasid is shown in a soundproof glass cubicle, beating his chest with his fist, a traditional part of the prayer on Yom Kippur. Confession of sins, this is being presented as humor, lamented Siskel. Sacrilegious, Siskel stated, adding that a Hasid is the most religious Jew. This is sinful that he is presented as a joke. But Hasidim could not always rely on sympathetic critics to ensure that their community and customs were portrayed in a positive light. A media-savvy advocate was needed from within their own ranks, and thus the Hassidic Actors Guild was born.
The interesting thing about HAG, and what in my mind makes it a subject worthy of study, is the fact that this is essentially an organization built upon an oxymoron. I mean, on the one hand, you have Hasidism, which is this mystical brand of Orthodox Judaism, whose members adhere to really strict religious laws and generally don't associate with people from the outside community unless absolutely necessary. I mean, a big part of the Hasidic lifestyle is, devoting yourself to keeping alive these traditions and customs that date back to the late 1700s. So, I mean, if this is like contemporary pop culture over here, Hasidim are as far at the opposite end of the spectrum as you can possibly get. When I first stumbled upon HAG about 10 years ago, I was sort of fascinated by all these internal contradictions. But I realized that the more I tried to understand the group collectively, basically, the clearer it became that I would have to understand Izzy first, without whom HAG would not exist.
Izzy's early years in pre-World War II Warsaw were happy ones. As the only child of two of the leading lights of the Yiddish theater, he learned to walk and talk amidst a whirl of sawdust and grease paint, and was encouraged to treat the entire company as his extended family.
What was your first film?
The first film that I remember being in, although I may have been in others as a baby, but I remember being in The Dybbuk with my parents, who starred as the Rebbe and the Rebbitzin. And I was just one of the little kids' background, and, we were always playing one way or the other on the set, in school. I've watched it many times. My father was just enormous in that film, and mother was just, but that was the first film, The Dybbuk. I hope you'll get a chance to see it one day.
Unfortunately, Izzy's next film appearance was captured on the screen as he himself was taken captive by the Nazis. While both his parents perished, Izzy miraculously escaped and fought with the partisans. Following World War II, Izzy found himself detained in a displaced persons camp on the island of Cyprus. The irony of being liberated, only to be imprisoned, was not lost on him. Izzy lusted to be free. After several attempts, Izzy managed to escape his captors, this time stowing away on a merchant ship bound for Palestine, where war had broken out between Jews and Arabs. After Israel's stunning victory over its Arab neighbors, Izzy became a founding member of the Israeli Army Entertainment Troupe. However, owing to a disagreement as to the artistic direction of the troupe, Izzy wrangled a discharge. In his next incarnation, Izzy sought anonymity as a member of a kibbutz, an agricultural collective where he reportedly was responsible for building a cannery specializing in the packing of pickles. However, Izzy's attempt to sublimate his artistic nature for the sake of socialist ideas was not meant to be. For some time thereafter, Izzy sailed the high seas as a member of the Israeli Merchant Marine, eventually jumping ship in New York City.
Oh, when Izzy came off the boat from Israel, it was like he had a black mustache and like he had the dirtiest feet that I'd ever seen, actually, and his eyes were on fire. He was ready for anything. He was in America.
Izzy embraced the land of opportunity with open arms and set out on a metaphysical journey to find himself. He quickly adapted to his new life in Bohemian Brooklyn, making ends meet through a variety of odd jobs, including a temporary stint as an artist's model.
I had a commission to do an album cover for a white blues band, Siegel Schwall, who worked out of Chicago. And the record company sent me photographs that were not terrific. And there was a very tight deadline, so there wasn't really time enough to go to Chicago and work from them. And one day I was rounding the corner in Brooklyn, where I live, trying to figure out how to manage the assignment. And coming toward me was someone who looked very much like the bass player in the group. And I stopped him and introduced myself and asked if he had time to pose, etc. And lo and behold, it was Izzy. That's how I met him. And eventually he posed in my studio for all the members of the band, including the black guy.
I would run into him in the neighborhood, and I'd say, "What are you doing?" He was always running around with a script or something that he wrote, or something that someone drew of him. He never had a job, but he was always running around with some kind of script or something like that.
And what did this make you think?
That he doesn't work for a living.
We would do anything to avoid getting a real job, so we figured, why don't we just become songwriters? We wrote a song called The Lizards in the Desert, I remember, which was a really... The lizards in the desert have to find the heavy night.
Vance was already a veteran of the music scene, having been a founding member of the doo-wop group Jay and the Americans, whose success brought Kenny and his bandmates to national attention in the early 1960s. However, Izzy did find work translating and editing Kabbalistic works into English. His employer, Rabbi Philip Berg, of the Research Center for Kabbalah, had an enormous effect on him, having in fact bought him his first pair of tefillin. From then on, Izzy began to take on a more observant religious lifestyle. Immersing himself in the esoteric meanings of the divine sphirot, or spheres, Izzy developed a series of Kabbalistic drawings in which he was able to sell as illustrations for various magazine articles. At about the same time, Izzy began speaking at synagogues and colleges on the subject of Kabbalah. One such speaking engagement at the Rhode Island School of Design led to the production of a meditative video by avant-garde videographer and faculty member Alan Sondheim.
Kabbalah literally means receiving. Man is the receiver, the recipient of the light, of the divine light, the light from the source, from the creator, the origin of everything.
But the most significant person to enter Izzy's life at this time was his neighbor, Barbara, who, contrary to her own expectations, would soon become his wife. Miraculously, Izzy and Barbara were brought together by Kabbalah. In keeping with the literal translation of Kabbalah, Barbara soon received a sign from above.
One of the times I ran into him, he was translating some Kabbalistic texts into English. After that, I was in a bookstore in the village. This book fell off the shelf, hit me in the head, and the page it opened to a page about Kabbalah, which I didn't really understand that well. But I knew that Izzy had been studying Kabbalah. So when I went home that evening, I tried to call him, which was not a usual thing. I would never call him because he had called me many, many times. He would call me and ask me to marry him periodically, and I would always basically laugh at him. But this time I called him because I wanted to find out about Kabbalah. There was no answering machines in those days, so I didn't leave a message. But that evening, he came to my house, and something happened. Then we started to see each other.
Barbara finally succumbed to Izzy's persistence and accepted his proposal of marriage. Within the year, she was pregnant with their first child, Isaac. Over the course of the next several years, young Isaac would frequently be photographed with Izzy. Father and son proved highly photogenic for Natural History magazine's cover story on Hasidim. Not long afterwards, Izzy and son were called upon for Moment magazine's article entitled Jewish Fathers for a Change, or this photo, which appeared in the Brazilian edition of National Geographic. Their first film together was experimental filmmaker Zalman Joffin's Rituals and Demonstrations. In this scene, Isaac undergoes the ritual of upshoren, when the male child's hair is cut for the first time at the age of 3. The custom originates with the biblical concept that man is likened to a tree whose fruits are forbidden to be eaten for the first 3 years. This particular film happened to come with an additional perk. Izzy was able to weave Isaac's shorn locks into his first set of artificial payas. Izzy was fond of saying that Hashem, God, takes a person where he or she wants to go. Sure enough, Izzy got his first film role after answering an open call for dancers in the screen adaptation of Fiddler on the Roof. Izzy appears fleetingly in the chorus, but Fiddler proved to be a major turning point in his life and career. Izzy was befriended by the production's Judaic consultant, Simcha Gottlieb, who would later serve as both spiritual advisor and spokesperson for the Hassidic Actors Guild.
Back when we were shooting Fiddler on the Roof, I was a consultant on that production. Izzy used to come to me with burning questions about Judaism, about philosophy. Izzy was a Holocaust survivor. He couldn't reconcile the notion of good and evil, of such magnitude of evil being perpetrated in a world which was being created by and conducted by a God who was good. We talked for hours and hours and hours about Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah and the very notion of the magnanimous goodness of God. We couldn't reconcile those two ideas until we delved deeply into the Kabbalistic concepts of what is good and what is evil.
Under Simcha Gottlieb's tutelage, Izzy began to take seriously the performance of the mitzvot, or biblical commandments. Foremost among these mitzvot is the study of the sacred texts, comprising both the revealed Torah, known as the Talmud, and the hidden, or mystical concepts as synthesized in the study of Hasidim, all of which adds up to a blueprint for living. Meanwhile, Izzy was far from being unique with regard to his return to Judaism. In fact, a collective consciousness had given rise to a veritable movement of return. For their part, sociologists attribute this spiritual reawakening to the nation of Israel's series of spectacular military victories against an overwhelming number of Arab legions. In 1967, the Six-Day War was seen as a true miracle, followed 6 years later by another miraculous victory in the Yom Kippur War. Overcoming such incredible odds certainly offered food for thought, especially the idea that a heavenly force had interceded on behalf of the Jewish people. In the meantime, the desire to document this amorphous but mushrooming movement of return began to take shape within Izzy's psyche. The prime impetus for utilizing the media was inspired by the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Rebbe frequently referred to the media as neshek, or the weaponry needed to fight against the darkness. Izzy found a fellow soldier and filmmaker Barry Ralbag. Armed with a camera, they made the documentary The Return, a Hassidic experience.
A friend of mine who we're very good friends and very old friends who grew up together, he said to me, Mordechai, you're Jewish? You don't know anything what Judaism is all about? Come and find out, check it out. That's what he said. Go and check it out.
The film focuses on people who, not unlike Izzy, after riding out the 60s, abandon their secular lifestyles and adopt Judaism as their next trip. The Return initially aired on PBS in prime time and was selected by both the New York Times and TV Guide as a pick of the week. Subsequently, The Return won a red ribbon at the American Film Festival, which then took the film on a nationwide tour. The success of The Return brought Izzy to the attention of the producers planning the film version of Chaim Potek's best-selling novel, The Chosen. Hired to serve in the dual role of technical consultant and actor, Izzy coached Hollywood teen idol Robbie Benson as the next in line to assume leadership of a Hasidic dynasty. Benson's character, however, is attracted by the secular world, which ultimately leads to a confrontation with his father, played by Oscar winner Rod Steiger.
My Daniel will go his own way.
Benson, the Rebbe's son, subsequently leaves the fold, which, from the viewpoint of the Hasidim, represents a blow to the Hasidic lifestyle. Consequently, Izzy brokered a compromise to ensure the Hasidic community's endorsement of the production. In return, the producers agreed to meet the demands of the Hasidim. Specifically, the film's co-star, played by Barry Miller, must in the end fill the void left by Benson.
I've been thinking of becoming a rabbi.
The Chosen's need for large numbers of Hasidic performers, especially for the sprawling wedding scene, as well as background for the synagogue scenes, was in effect the launching pad for the formation of the Hassidic Actors Guild.
I spent a great deal of time with various Hasidic leadership trying to convince them that what we were making was not going to be an attack on Hasidism, which it is not. And although I never got official sort of sanction, I never got condemnation from them either. So there were lots of people who were on the fringe who sort of live in both worlds who were willing to participate with us.
Izzy placed great demands on the members of the Hassidic Actors Guild. For one, he designed a theatrical set consisting of a latticework of Jewish stars, solely for the purpose of meditation. Each HAG get-together began in this latticework. The goal of this meditation was to reinforce the raison d'etre for HAG, and being a member of HAG was acceptable only on a collective basis, a positive value Izzy had taken out of his kibbutz experience. Meditation was followed by exercise, which Izzy affectionately referred to as Hassidic aerobics.
Turn around and cross over.
Izzy's aerobics were peppered with the likes of Svelte means Gelt, which was eventually published in Izzyisms. Borrowing freely from a chorus line, Izzy put HAG members through their paces. In time, Izzy Hebraicized his ensemble and referred to them as a chorus line. Determined to shape his HAGmen into well-rounded artists, Izzy also scheduled weekly jam sessions at the HAG headquarters, during which each member was encouraged to develop his musical talents. Shimmy Silver was Izzy's most trusted lieutenant within HAG's inner sanctum. Izzy had enlisted Shimmy's talents after watching him perform his dancing magic act at a wedding.
I would say I've done magic, dressed as a Hasidic rabbi for over 500 weddings. I do this l'shem mitzvah, no reward. And I decided I wanted to be paid for my capabilities. When I met Izzy and his organization, HAG, I subsequently got reimbursed for my efforts. I did a couple of record covers, Cole Salonica, I did the Vegas. Through Izzy and HAG, I must have been in, I don't know, 40, 50 movies, I don't even remember.
Enter Izzy and Shimmy as the Jews Brothers, spoofing the original Blues Brothers duo on the weekly series Saturday Night High.
There was another movie that we shot. It was called The Fisher King. That starred, I believe, Robin Williams and Jeff Bridges. Izzy came up with a phenomenal idea that everybody should be walking around in Grand Central Station as if they're going to work, and the next scene should be that we're all doing the waltz, one within each other. The director took to the idea, loved it, and then subsequently did it. And in that shot, I'm there with Dr. Heshy Klein dancing the waltz. That served as a catalyst for everybody else to start dancing and made for a phenomenal shot and a beautiful aspect of the movie.
Shimmy was a real asset to every production, keeping actors and crew laughing, always ready to schmooze and kibitz with anyone who would listen, as exemplified in this break from shooting Weekend at Bernie's, starring Jonathan Silverman and his co-star, Catherine Mary Stewart.
Say hello to my mother.
Mom! Is it on?
Avi K. was another key member of HAG's inner sanctum. Unfortunately, Avi had fallen on bad times and had become a member of the city's many homeless souls.
Sitting down in New York Town one day. Yeah, I'm sitting down in New York Town one day. I was down, I was out, I was penniless, homeless. As he found me, he took me in, gave me a new lease on life. He introduced me to HAG. He asked me what I want to do. I said I want to make children's movies. I wound up making children's educational movies, funny movies, religious movies, and now I feel fulfilled. If you have any requests, you just write them on the back of a $5 bill.
Rehabilitated by Izzy, Avi threw himself into making quality programming for Jewish children, an enterprise that contributed greatly to HAG's working capital.
This is my letter Aleph.
I wish I had a letter Aleph like that.
Yeah? Well, here, if you really want it, I'll give it to you.
That was very nice of Harold. He did a very big mitzvah. And the most important mitzvah in the Torah is to love your neighbor like yourself.
With increased revenues generated by his forays into puppetry and claymation, Avi shifted his attention to producing highly stylized cartoons, which appealed to an even wider audience. Baruch Rubenstein first came to Izzy's attention as they were davening side by side in a small temple in Brooklyn.
I met Izzy at a synagogue in Bedford-Stuy. The two of us used to go there to help out with the minyan, and Izzy asked me if I would like to help him out with his work, and I said yes.
Little did Izzy suspect that Baruch had cherished lifelong dreams of a career in show business and would soon become HAG's most enthusiastic member.
As a member of HAG, I really love dancing in the Hasidic chorus line. I really love doing the Hasidic aerobics and really love jamming with the guys. However, I really appreciate when Izzy got me the part I like best, playing Fido Castro's Rabbi, which appeared on Saturday Night High and proved to be very popular, which got me recognition and some dates.
During Purim, when I was in Union City, I used to get dressed up in my military fatigues, and all the Cubans in Union City used to think that I was Fidel. and they would wave and honk their horns and cheer at me, and they would scream, "Hi, Fidel." I hate spotlights.
David Lieber came to Izzy's attention through a chance encounter, but quickly carved out a niche for himself within HAG.
I met Izzy in the parking lot of the 2nd Avenue Deli, which is kind of odd since there is no parking lot on the 2nd Avenue Deli. But in the state of mind that I was in, everything looked like a parking lot to me. And there he was, in all his glory, with his beard and his yarmulke and his tzitzis. And he asked me, would you like to be in a film?
David's musical abilities made him an invaluable asset to Izzy, who enlisted him and his guitar to help spread the HAG message through song. Getting High on Prayer, the duo's most successful collaboration, inspired a series of public service announcements that aired on both radio and television.
The best way to get high is to take to the sky and pray to the Holy One. And the higher you go, the more you know. You can pray and still have some fun. Getting high on prayer anytime, anywhere. You can dance and you can sing it. You're an angel, you can wing it. Getting high on prayer anytime, anywhere. Getting high.
Izzy was delighted to have a quorum of regular HAG men to depend upon, but running an organization entailed a certain amount of procedural upkeep. The shoebox of Isaac's old hair trimmings might generate full-bodied payas for one, but now there were a guild's worth of sideburns to conceal.
I think he went out to Utah, actually. There's a train that goes from Chicago to San Francisco, and when it goes through Utah, it's the only herd of yaks that are still in the United States. So he pitched a tent out in Utah, I remember, and he would get up at the crack of dawn and go quietly into the herds of yak and cut pieces of their hair off so he could come back to New York. And when he came back to New York, he had a trunk full of yak hair that he had his wife weave into payas.
Did Izzy really ask you to make payas out of yak hair?
All the time, yeah.
You don't sound like you enjoyed it too much.
Well, I thought it was a waste of time.
When Barbara finally voiced her discontent, Izzy was forced to bring his yak hair to a professional.
My name is Bob Kelly, and I am the official payasmacher for the Hassidic Actors Guild. I've been in the business for about 56 years. We do many of the Broadway shows. We do a lot of film work, television work, anything that's hairy, we do. Okay, how do I know Izzy? Well, he found out about me pretty much, I guess, through the Actors Guild, whoever it was. And he's a very charming guy to work with, you know. And every time I make a beard or something like that, I use a little of his hair from his beard, you know. It's a nice texture, it's fine quality. That's why his beard is so thin looking compared to the one I have, right?
In case I go bald, this will be perfect. God forbid I should go bald, you know what I mean?
One never knows. Today. Yeah, we developed this line of payas with the wig on top, especially for Izzy, and actually what we call it is pay-is. It'll hang in there. That's permanent wave.
Okay, wow, it's great.
With HAG membership and HAG hairpieces taken care of, the next item on Izzy's to-do list was a HAG theme song, and for this, he turned to his old friend, Kenny Vance.
This man's gone to Hollywood, playing Hassidim all night long. 'Cause I'm a hangman, baby. I can't get enough of you. What do you think, Izzy? You think this will work?
I think we gotta work on playing Hasidim. That last part has to, you know, just the phrasing of it.
Ultimately, the HAG jingle was introduced at the bitter end, when Izzy made a guest appearance with Kenny Vance and the Planetones.
I'm a headache man, baby. I can't get enough of Filmland. When I go to sleep at night, I'm the only one I'm thinking of. Do it one more time.
Saturday Night HAG. He was an amazing guy, Izzy. He had made a lot of contacts, and he was now producing TV shows. He had this idea to do a show called Saturday Night HAG. He put together the TV show with no budget at all, and I was the host of the show.
Shalom and welcome to Saturday Night HAG with today's host, the mellow Kenny Vance.
In ancient times, the Levites not only served the Kohanim or priests, but were also the chief musicians in the Holy Temple. And like the Levites, there are contemporary Jewish musicians who continue to carry on the tradition. Avi and Yossi Piamenta are seventh-generation Jerusalemites. Their music is a blend of traditional Middle Eastern sounds and contemporary rock. It gives me great joy to introduce the Piamenta Band. Well, that's it. We had a great time, and we hope you did too. Tune in next week for some more fantastic entertainment. Until then, be well and shalom.
Now flash forward some 20 years when Oscar-nominated filmmaker Josh Aronson produced a documentary about Kenny Vance entitled Feeling No Pain. Izzy appears as one of Kenny's spiritual sources, whether in this madcap building of a sukkah on Izzy's back porch, or visiting the gravesite of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, just as they had frequented Lubavitch headquarters when the Rebbe was still alive, dispensing advice, blessings, and dollars.
I'll ask you the question I have asked several famously beautiful women who have been in that chair. Is being better looking than many people a professional advantage, disadvantage, or of no consequence or interest?
Well, where I come from, we have an expression that beauty is only shin deep.
Why are the students laughing and applauding?
Izzy's penchant for shtick, or humor, ranged from the sublime to the ridiculous. His interest in humor was really another opportunity to get the message out, all of which led to the production of Joker at the Wedding, which focuses on the Badchan, or Joker, who to this day still performs at Hassidic weddings. Hosted by Henny Youngman, while the Joker is played by Moshe Waldox, Joker afforded Izzy the opportunity to teach the exalted place of humor in Jewish life and learning.
Humor has long been a method of teaching employed by the rabbis. The Talmud states that the great teacher, Rabbah, used to begin his lecture with a joke. This, according to the Talmud, would open up the minds of his students. Also, according to the oral tradition known as the Mishnah, one of the ways of learning Torah is with a little bit of laughter.
There was a poor woman before Passover, didn't have enough money to buy matzahs and wine, and she didn't know what to do, a widow. So she decided to ask God himself for help. So she wrote a note. Dear God, please send me $500 so I can make Passover properly. She put her name and address in the note. She folded it and threw it out the window. As it floated to earth, a Satmar Chassid happened to be walking by. He picked up the note. He looked at it, and he saw the woman needed $500. He looked in his pocket, and he saw he only had $250, but he figured, it would help. So he took the $250 to the woman's home, and he gave it to her, and as he walked down the stairs, he heard the woman thanking God. She said, Dear God, thank you for sending me the money. But next time when I ask you for $500, please, don't send it with a Satmar Chassid. He kept half.
Joker, which was aired for years on a number of Jewish networks, brought Izzy to the attention of British filmmaker Jeremy Bloom, whose documentary on Jewish humor was going into production for broadcast on PBS. With Izzy now on board as a consultant, he brought the production team to the streets of Brooklyn's Borough Park, where the carnival-like masquerade party of Purim was in full swing. Meanwhile, after much behind-the-scenes negotiation, Izzy received permission for the production to film the goings-on inside the Munkacher synagogue. The wild and frenzied tabletop dancing served as the opening act for the classic Purim spiel, or play, a hilarious musical that is performed nonstop for hours. Subsequently, Izzy served in a similar consulting capacity for PBS's monumental 11-part series entitled Civilization and the Jews.
Remarkably, from the myriad images that make up this monumental series, it was Izzy and Isaac's photograph that was chosen by PBS for its publicity campaign.
Hosted by former Israel Foreign Minister and Ambassador to the United States, Abba Eban.
In the early 18th century, a man left his home in the Polish Ukraine and went into the mountains to meditate on the condition of his world. He was known as the Baal Shem Tov, the master of the good name. The inspiration that he found would revitalize the Judaism of Eastern Europe through a movement known as Hasidism. Unlike the rabbis of his day, he believed that even a simple, unlearned man could approach God directly through prayer and worship. And in coming closer to God, a man could bring divine influence through himself into the world.
Despite Izzy's long affiliation with PBS, which began with the airing of The Return, the network would later pass on HAG's production of Israel, the Promise of the Jewish People. This documentary takes a strong right-wing position, epitomized by on-camera host Bob Grant, a controversial radio talk show arch-conservative.
This is part of the Golan Heights. Incredibly, there are some people who think Israel should return this land to the Syrians. It's obvious to anybody who comes up here, this would be an act of madness. It was also here on the Golan Heights in 1973 that the Syrians participated in the sneak attack on Israel known as the Yom Kippur War. That occurred in October of that year, and the Syrians thought they had a golden opportunity to retake all this territory. However, the IDF prevailed again, and in one of the most fierce tank battles of modern times, thousands of Syrian tanks were destroyed.
PBS took umbrage at the documentary, especially the interview with a former Muslim Arab who converted to Judaism.
I was taught and brought up to hate the Jews. At home, in school, among friends, it was always the Jews did this to us, the Jews are killing us, the Jews took our lands from us, the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. I heard this all my life. And at a certain point, I looked at the situation and I said, this is impossible. Why should I hate these people? Why this blind hatred for another human being? Are they not also created in the image of God? So I chose my way. I was a disgrace, an infidel, and they tried everything, including paying people to try to murder me.
If anything, the PBS rejection only fueled Izzy's propagandistic, if not combatant, nature, this time focusing on conversion as a major theme in HAG's documentary on Black Jews. Depicting the actual conversion process and ceremony, the documentary reflects a true sense of self-sacrifice on the part of the converts, especially pertaining to the obligation incumbent upon all men and boys to undergo the ritual of circumcision. The conversion ceremony concludes with immersion in a mikveh, or ritual bath. In effect, Black Jews was produced as a continuation of The Return. Both documentaries were brought to the screen as a testimony to the fulfillment of a twofold prophecy, namely that prior to the coming of Mashiach, Jews will begin to return to their roots, in addition to the phenomenon of non-Jews converting to Judaism. All of a sudden, mainstream TV was knocking on Izzy's door. The producers of the sitcom Barney Miller brought him aboard to help script their token Jewish episode. This was a golden opportunity for Izzy to indulge his natural inclination for shtick, while allowing his militant politics to take center stage. In fact, Izzy's script was based on a true incident when Hasidim stormed a police station after an elderly Jew had been stabbed to death on Shabbat.
Shalom! I'm telling you something. The Hasidic community is not going to stand still much longer. We are tired of being the favorite target of every two-bit hooligan. We want concrete and visible action taken to finally put an end to this.
We will do everything we can.
I feel safer already.
Victor, talk about touchy. God, what happened?
I don't know, Bon. I went down there to talk to him, so I walked out on the steps and I says, "This is Inspector Luger, NYPD, I want you to know we're working on your problem. In the meantime, why don't you all go home and take a shave?"
Maybe something good will come out of all of this.
Maybe, but I seriously doubt it.
That's good. Too much hope can drive you crazy.
Other primetime television series were quick to jump on Izzy's bandwagon. Unsolved Mysteries was next to become the beneficiary of Izzy and his script detailing the murder of a teenage yeshiva student.
On Saturday, November 1st, 1986, Don Daly was dispatched to a yeshiva in Long Beach, New York, to investigate the murder of one of its students. Daly found a series of clues which indicated that the killer might have been familiar with the yeshiva and the customs of Orthodox Judaism. It appeared that Chaim had been killed as he slept. His body was then moved, not once, but twice. Chaim's window had been left wide open on a chilly October evening.
It would be customary in the religion to open a window or a door where the dead person would be to let the spirit out.
Police eventually polygraphed 40 students and several of the school's teachers and rabbis.
Did you kill Chaim Weiss?
God forbid. No.
Whatever Izzy got involved with invariably led to controversy. The yeshiva world roundly criticized him for washing laundry in public. In addition, certain rabbinical organizations would not let the fires die down from what had become known as the Barney Miller debacle. Eventually, Izzy did apologize, especially to the mayor of New York and the police department in particular. To make amends, Izzy penned an episode of NYPD Blue in which Dennis of NYPD Blue, Izzy was asked to interview fans for Entertainment Tonight.
Of course. Pleasure working with you. Thank you. Yeah.
Izzy's interview led to still another incarnation, this time as an on-camera correspondent for the British Jewish Television Alliance. And Izzy just couldn't resist affecting a slight British accent.
We're live from the Borough Park section of Brooklyn where the Baba Hasidim are burning the chametz. Chametz is the leaven. The leaven is that which makes the bread rise, symbolic of the ego. Therefore, it is a process of ego nullification. This is Izzy DeLive, today on the eve of Passover.
Izzy's persona was also becoming more familiar via New York's local Channel 9, having sold the station on the idea that Hasidim were good news.
The sages of the Talmud have declared, whosoever has not witnessed the joy of Simchat Beit HaShoeva, the celebration of the water drawing ceremony, has not truly witnessed joy in his or her life.
Izzy as reporter was also filmed for the highly acclaimed documentary, A Life Apart.
The custom of Tashlich, a most emotional prayer recited by the water's edge, was instituted to arouse the mercy of the Creator upon his penitent people. Therefore, this hallowed ritual has become a fixture of the days of awe, those 10 days of repentance which commence with the Jewish New Year of Rosh Hashanah. Highly symbolic, Tashlich is yet another manifestation of the Jewish soul's desire to perfect itself in the service of God.
However, Izzy's segment wound up on the cutting room floor, and neither the producers nor Izzy would comment. As it turned out, however, Hasidim were not always synonymous with good news, as evidenced by the Crown Heights riots between the Lubavitcher Hasidim and their African-American neighbors.
Izzy filed a report about the confrontation, but for political reasons, according to Izzy, the station did not air his story. Izzy was extremely upset, especially since he felt that his coverage might help diffuse the tension. The riots broke out after a Lubavitcher driver hit a black youngster with his car, and Izzy had learned that the very same young Hassid had only months before raced into a burning building and saved a number of black children. The young Hassid had even been awarded a citation for bravery from the city of New York for his heroics. Izzy was furious and threatened to jump to another station.
To appease Izzy, or more precisely, to take him out of the picture, the station assigned him to cover an international conference in Morocco
on Maimonides, the 12th century physician and rabbinic scholar, whose texts are still widely read today. For the Jews in attendance, the conference hit some very rocky ground when their Muslim hosts claimed that Maimonides had converted to Islam. Izzy, who took issue with the claim, filed a report about this Moroccan Superman, cape and all, who was actually the doorman at Izzy's hotel. Izzy's innuendo, or rather the lack of it, caused something of an international incident, culminating in Izzy becoming the first Western journalist asked to leave the country. As a result, the station felt it had no choice but to fire Izzy. But firing Izzy, and the notoriety his dismissal created, only seemed to activate his phoenix-like quality of resurrecting himself. And voila! Here's the Izman hosting his own show entitled Cinema Judaica, which was carried by the Bravo network.
Welcome to this week's installment of Cinema Judaica. I'm your host, Yisrael Lifshitz. The movie we're going to take a look at today is called Don't, or at least it was called Don't when we were in production. When it got released in Germany, it was called Meshuggah, like when Meshuggah walks down. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, it's a very interesting, complex script in which I not only serve as the Judaic consultant, but I also play the rabbi who intones the traditional Kel Molei Rachamim at the cemetery.
Have a good trip, Mom. See you again.
To pull off the role of the rabbi officiating at the cemetery and the one who intones the Kel Molei Rachamim, I brought along my voice coach, Label Razna.
Okay, let's take it from the top again.
Working with the film's director, Danny Levy, a Swiss-born, now German director, was a wonderful experience. As you know, I have the utmost affection and admiration for those auteurs that not only write the films, direct it, produce it, but they also star in it. And Maria Schrader is the co-star of this film and also the co-writer. With me is Maria Schrader, one of Europe's leading actresses. And interestingly enough, let me take that. I'm so dry.
I know that.
In your relationship, both professionally and socially with Danny, have you found his Jewishness to be a problem?
Never.
Never?
Never. No, actually, I was raised very open to Israel. Actually, my father would send me to Israel when I was 14. And I mean, the whole Holocaust and what happened, what he experienced as a 13-year-old child was an issue for him all his life.
Can I just get a sound check there?
What's it like today working as a Jew in Germany?
In such a different world, in the movie world, and you know, all the goyim I'm hanging out in Germany, who running the film business.
Izzy once described Cinema Judaica as entertainment verite, with Izzy simply schmoozing on the set, as in this overheard moment with Goost producer Mark Lipsky.
Got me a part in The Chosen in 1980. Oh. He knew someone and said, go see someone, and as soon as they saw this, they hired me.
So did you have anything to do with Stranger Among Us?
Yeah, I was the consultant for that, but I play the Rebbe's right-hand guy. My big scene in that is the dancing at the Shabbos table. I lead like a Hassidic conga line. So that was
interesting.
In Goosed, billed as an offbeat comedy, Izzy appears opposite Joan Rivers, who brings her mixed-up daughter, played by Jennifer Tilly, to a Hasidic rabbi, hoping that the saintly Jew can remedy her daughter's dysfunctional behavior.
Rabbi, Rabbi, Rabbi. Oh, of course, I forgot you people don't shake hands. Rabbi, my husband and I are very generous people, and we would love to give you a $10,000 donation to your temple and my daughter. She cooks and she cleans.
When Izzy was able to step outside of his life with the Hassidic Actors Guild, he took to nature. And with his newfound wealth, he bought a horse farm. Izzy liked nothing more than to go for long rides on his favorite steed, whom he affectionately called HAG. And as with everything else, Izzy turned his passion for horses into a feature for Cinema Judaica.
On this edition of Cinema Judaica, we're pleased to present a rather novel segment that we're calling Jews and Horses on Film. But a little background first. According to historians, Jews figured rather prominently amongst the conquistadors when they came to the Americas with Cortez. After their conquests, Jews settled and established ranches throughout the Americas and in effect became the first cowboys. Interestingly, one of the largest box office hits in Latin America was those Jewish gauchos. The film tells the story of a community of Jews who seek refuge from Eastern European persecution and journey to Argentina. But it wasn't long before the same old scenarios threatened their existence. However, the will to survive and their adaptability to their new country make for a classic happy ending.
For good measure, Izzy signed off on this installment of Cinema Judaica with this MTV moment.
You're watching that setting sun, you're out on the prairie. Like your dreams, they're light years away. So you ride up in the mountains, give your old horses a hay. And when you give him a thanks, you tell him what your mama said. She said, son, oh mine, have yourself a good time. Only don't you forget that your soul is divine. Yes, it shines, oh it shines. Yes, it makes you shine. So don't you forget that your soul is divine. She said, son, oh mine, have yourself a good time. Only don't you forget that your soul is divine. Yes, it shines, oh it shines. Yes, it makes you shine. So don't you forget that your soul is divine.
Izzy never tired in his efforts to utilize the media for getting the message out. Borrowing freely from mainstream television, Izzy became a force behind the scenes of the annual Lubavitch Telethon. The telethon not only provided an excellent opportunity for the Lubavitcher Hasidim to make known their various outreach opportunities, but also proved to be an ideal fundraising vehicle.
To help all of our neighbors of all ages, of all races, of all religions and affiliations who are in need. So, dear friends, pick up those phones, call us and say, Rabbi, take my money, please.
In order to safeguard the identity of a certain individual and his family, Izzy recreated the testimony of Mr. X.
I began to become extremely reliant on these medications, and
in addition to other stresses I had. I started to drink and mix the booze with the medicine. Somehow, by the grace of God, I met Rabbi Pearl. The introduction of spirituality into my life started to calm me down. I had been reunited with my family. I don't have to take any medicines anymore.
And once again, Izzy's longtime friend, Kenny Vance, volunteered his talents for the cause.
Everybody who's watching, I want them to support Chabad. It's really important. They do great work.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kenny Vance, Eddie Hokerson, and friends, Kenny Vance and the Planetones.
And we belong together. Yes, we belong together. For eternity.
What profession other than yours would you like to attempt?
Hands down, I'd love to be a basketball player. I mean, I love basketball. I just think it's the greatest sport in the world. Thank God I'm still playing a little bit, but I would love to be a ball player.
Not surprisingly, Izzy's love for his favorite sport became the subject of a successful documentary series. The Jewish Basketball Hall of Fame sports venture remains unclear, shrouded in mystery, if you will. But Izzy made news as the first Hasidic sportscaster, co-hosting Cavalcade of Boxing alongside the legendary commentator Bert Sugar.
Macho come macho.
The guy's built like Tarzan, but he was fighting like Jane. I don't know what got into that.
That's a good line. You know, can I steal that? I will.
I can't watch these prelims anymore. Let me just check out for a while. The lights are killing me.
Well, there went Izzy. I'll never forget this magic moment. Oh, great. Cavalcade of Boxing used to be sponsored by Gillette, and this is what I get. I used to date a girl who looked like that. Could you throw some of that hair on my head? This was Izzy, this is Bert, and we have no idea where we are.
Okay. We'll be right back. We now have an announcement from our sponsors.
God, I hope they're still there.
Izzy, however, really took it on the chin because of Cavalcade of Boxing. Many rabbis publicly spoke out against the violent nature of the sport. What's more, the rabbinate stated that Izzy and HAG's objectives were all too transparent, arguing that HAG's existence was self-serving and in no way promoted Jewish ideals in a proper light. But Izzy stood fast and responded to his critics by launching what would certainly become another television first, Hassidic Sports.
One of my favorite sports personalities in the Jewish world, in fact, he's a sports hero of mine, is Rabbi Nachum Shifrin, better known as the Surfing Rabbi.
I am a Jew, and I'm an Orthodox Jew, and I'm just trying to run my daily life in a way that I can try to influence other people, try to bring them closer to some sort of spirituality. And in the context of what I'm doing, hopefully I'll shed a little bit of light in somebody else's life.
For Rabbi Shifrin, a surfing enthusiast extraordinaire, the beach is his bima, and the waves are his congregants.
The real secret is to try to connect what goes on in the ocean and what goes on in the water with the beauty of God's creation and somehow make sense of it. So what I have done is I have taken my former life, which was very involved with athletics, and I've used it in a way to attract people, to bring them closer to Judaism. I've been able to reach out to people that otherwise are either unaffiliated or somehow have not found themselves in the Jewish community.
Surfing, or more precisely in Izzy's case, boogie boarding, became Izzy's passion.
I'm putting on my socks because, you know, it's keep my feet warm in the water. No, I'm only kidding. So the fins don't fall off.
Boogie Board USA, meet the man from Rockaway. A Boogie Board USA, meet the man from Rockaway. He's the elder statesman down the beach. Between the jetties he loves to preach. God's word formed the ocean, life's rhythm set in motion. Barrel waves rolling in, get ready to rock, put on your fins. Boogie Board USA, meet the man from Rockaway. Boogie Board USA, meet the man from Rockaway. Boogie Board USA, meet the man from Rockaway. Boogie Board USA, meet the man from Rockaway.
Izzy's promotional values were not lost on Madison Avenue. Obviously, Hassidim as a tourist attraction became a selling point for visitors to the Big Apple.
It's never just another day in New York.
The world of advertising, however, would turn out to be another public relations disaster for Izzy. This poster of Izzy and a priest seen shopping together, which reads "Temptation in every aisle," also appeared in a number of different periodicals and became a feature story in the Israeli press. But it wasn't until the ad agency completed a mass mailing of the poster as a postcard that things really heated up, especially since the text on the back of the card suggested a homosexual relationship between the two clerics. Izzy decided it was time to take things into his own hands, but to compound matters, Izzy was caught in the act by a video-toting subway traveler who sold the tape to a nightly news program.
Izzy DeLiff, the controversial founder and president of the Hassidic Actors Guild, better known as HAG, is in hot water again, this time with the New York Transit Authority for defacing a subway poster. Amazingly, this apparent act of vandalism was caught on tape by a young college student who was filming in the subway as part of a school project. At first, Izzy tried denying it was him, claiming that many Hasidim tend to look and dress alike. And while this is most often true, in this case, the HAG man put his foot into his mouth. The student's footage revealed that the perpetrator was in fact wearing an orthotic shoe. And when police came knocking on Izzy's door, he was wearing that same orthotic shoe on his very orthodox foot. This is an unfolding story, of course, and we will have more details as they happen. Reporting from the New York subway system at Canal, I'm Mitchell Fink.
To deflect much of the flack generated by this advertisement, Izzy created a public affairs program entitled Mosaic. Again, Izzy wished to foster a healing process via the media.
Welcome to Mosaic. I'm your host, Yisrael Lifshitz. Once again, this edition of Mosaic will introduce you to people, places, and ideas, all of which contribute in making a mosaic of Jewish life. For starters, we wish to alert you to a genetic disorder known as Gaucher disease, which primarily affects Jews of Ashkenazi descent. While Gaucher is a debilitating and often life-threatening disease, it can be treated. There's a remarkable Talmudic concept which states, if you save just one life, it's as if you've saved the entire world.
My name is Stacy Feuer. I'm a 25-year-old Jewish woman who often relies on a cane for mobility.
What actually is the treatment today for Gaucher disease?
The treatment is essentially a synthetic enzyme that is put back into your body to replace what's missing.
What is that enzyme?
It's called Cerezyme, and it's the only treatment that's available right now, and it is largely effective.
When we were casting for Pi, an actor who came in who had played Hasids and was an honorary member of HAG said, well, if you're casting Hasids, then you need to get in touch with Izzy. Pi would not have been impossible without Izzy Lifshitz. One of the best scenes in Pi when Lenny Meyer writes the family and writes 40+1, and that was Izzy teaching Ben, and Ben came up to me and said, oh, this is great, we should do it.
The ancient Jews used Hebrew as their numerical system, eh? Each letter's a number. Like the Hebrew A, Aleph, it's 1. B, Bet, it's 2. You understand? But look at this. The numbers are interrelated. Like take the Hebrew word for father. Av, Aleph, Bet. 1, 2 equals 3. All right? Hebrew word for mother, Aim, Aleph, Mem, 1, 40 equals 41. Sum of 3 and 41, 44. All right? Now, Hebrew word for child. All right? Mother, father, child. Yelad. That's 10, 30, and 4. 44.
Izzy's involvement in the film Pi is a perfect example of how he operates. He encountered these young filmmakers with very limited resources
And he immediately saw this as an opportunity to get his foot in the door and then kind of jam it open with his knowledge of Judaica, but also with all the in-kind services he could provide the production. And he took full advantage of the situation. The irony is that his screen time in this film is extremely limited.
Stay down! Stay down! Okay.
Izzy has only one line in Pi. I mean, if you blink or reach down for a milk dud, you can miss him entirely. So it's really a testament to his relentlessness, or his chutzpah, to resort to a cliche, that he was able to parlay the smallest of roles into a real media windfall.
Izzy tried to get as much press as he could, but he wasn't trying to get press to help Pi. He was getting press to, promote himself. Iz calls up and says, "I got your articles in the Daily News and the Post." And sure enough, it comes out, and there are these big articles about Izzy. They don't even mention the movie. Just big articles about Izzy as a big film producer.
On account of all these ongoing publicity snafus and the fact that Izzy kept hogging the spotlight, there was some bad blood between Izzy and Darren. And when the film got accepted to Sundance, things only got worse.
Pi got into Sundance, and we were all jubilant because it was a hope at that point, and the hope was becoming a reality that we would go to this festival with this film.
Izzy came to Sundance, but Izzy didn't come to Sundance with us. Izzy just showed up at Sundance. And, there's a knock on the door, and it's this shivering guy with gray hair, and he's like, "I need a place to stay." And we were like, okay, we felt really bad for him, so we let Izzy stay. So Izzy was at Sundance, but, he was not an invited guest. My lead actor, Sean Gillette, we're at Sundance, and he's doing a promotion for the Sundance Channel, and Izzy walks in on the interview and inserts himself into the interview and makes it all about himself.
I'm Yisrael Lifshitz, also known as Izzy. I'm one of the producers of Pi, and you're watching Sundance Channel. And while our director is known as the Sundance Kid, I'm now known as the Sundance Yid.
That's Izzy in a nutshell, that interview. He's just constantly, fully making it about himself. And, when you're doing a project, it's about the project. It's not about Izzy.
From the very beginning, a lot of the misunderstandings between Darren and Izzy arose from the fact that they had competing agendas. I mean, Darren was directing his first feature, and so obviously he wants to make a film that will succeed artistically and also in the marketplace, whereas Izzy just wants a vehicle for himself and his message. So while Izzy was officially the Hassidic consultant on the production, the consultant is not supposed to run the set. And I think Izzy lost sight of that from time to time and probably offered a lot of advice that wasn't wanted.
Izzy repeatedly fought with Darren about the use of profanity in his screenplay. So when he appeared on the Actors Studio, he took his message public.
Now, the moment we have all waited for. What is your favorite curse word?
Well, James, I'm not trying to sound pretentious, but we don't curse. We don't use curse words because in the Gemara, the Talmud, which is the encyclopedia of Jewish thought, it states that a person can do all the good deeds in the world, do everything, but if he uses profanity, he loses the reward for all of that. And when you realize that the Creator created the world with 10 utterances, then you realize that how holy speech is and how it's to be used for communicating with another on the most truthful level.
Throughout his career, Izzy constantly clashed with producers and directors over what they considered to be outrageous demands. One case in point is They Called Her Rebbe, a true story that Izzy had optioned.
No one can quite pitch a story like The Is Man. I knew that I was going to be in for something unusual, but I wasn't quite prepared for the Hassidic hustle. One of the things that Izzy insisted on was that the catering had to be entirely kosher. Now, aside from the fact that that costs twice as much, it's very difficult to find, especially in the places that we were thinking about shooting the movie. But that was a must for Izzy. The women, of course, had to have long sleeves and long dresses down to the floor. And we're going to be shooting this in the summer, which then entered into the Jewish holidays. Of course, we could not shoot on Friday afternoons. We had a wrap on Friday afternoon, and never could we shoot on a Saturday. There were like 3 days that were available to shoot this movie because every other day was a Jewish holiday, or the night before a Jewish holiday, or of course the day after the Jewish holiday. So I passed.
When the rabbinate learned of Izzy's intention to produce They Called Her Rebbe, they openly declared war against HAG. Their strategy was to divide and conquer. They were able to put pressure on several HAG men and their families.
And it wasn't long before members of HAG began to turn on Izzy. Leading the revolt within the Hassidic Actors Guild was Zev Weintraub, who had been with Izzy from the start.
I got fed up at HAG, especially Izzy, and got so angry I shaved off my beard. Being an accountant and finding out that Izzy was getting a piece of each and every movie that I was in, and I was getting nothing, and I had to pay Izzy dues, and I had to pay him for the uniform, and I got very, very angry, and I feel we should get compensated accordingly.
But by far the most serious casualty of the rabbi's war against HAG was the heartbreaking incident involving HAG's musical director, David Lieber.
I fell madly in love. I met her father. I didn't really want to talk about what I did for a living. And everything was going fine. Then he found out and he called off the wedding.
As far as the Jewish community was concerned, Izzy's involvement with A Price Above Rubies was the last straw. Starring Renee Zellweger, Rubies tells the story of a Hassidic woman who, after committing adultery, leaves her pious husband and infant son.
Goodness is beauty.
Meanwhile, Zellweger's character reveals an expertise in the high-end jewelry business and eventually takes up with a very creative designer who also happens to be a man of color. As can be imagined, the plot provoked an enormous outcry from the Hasidic community. After getting wind of the storyline, the community prevented the production from shooting in Borough Park. Furthermore, the cast and crew's presence brought on threats of violence that seemed sure to escalate. Of course, it didn't help that the production company was accused of purposely dumping litter on location in an attempt to portray the neighborhood in a less than sanitary light. In A Price Above Rubies, Izzy portrays the Mohel, the one who performs the ritual circumcision.
Bring out the boy, please.
No, wait.
In addition to the negativity of the storyline, the rabbinate was appalled by the lack of accuracy in filming the rite of circumcision. The sharpening of the Mohel's knife is never, ever performed publicly. The Mohel, short and simple, is not a butcher. Across the board, the Orthodox/Hasidic organizations excommunicated the Isman and his Hagman. Lo and behold, you have an Isman who realizes that the inevitable final curtain is about to come down, especially as a result of his participation in Brooklyn Babylon. Utilizing the Romeo and Juliet formula, Brooklyn Babylon contrasts the lifestyles of both the Rastafarian and Hasidic communities.
Brooklyn Babylon probably started when I first went to Israel back in 1973, and I had some friends that lived in Jerusalem. I stayed with them in Chavia, and they were into Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, things that I didn't know much about, and kind of opened my eyes, especially to a text in the Bible, the Song of Songs, which I knew nothing about. And for them, this was an inspirational text about love, passion, and many of the secrets that are contained in the garden. And about a year later, I ended up in the hills of Jamaica. This was about 74, 75, when Bob Marley and reggae music was first starting to happen, and I got turned on to it. And ironically, I was in the hills with a Rastafarian outside McGrill, and he started reading from the Song of Songs. And he quoted me, especially the first line of the second verse, I am black and beautiful. And he said in his mind and in the Rastafarian philosophy, this was a literal proof that the true Israelites were black.
The film, which draws heavily on the biblical Song of Songs, features rap star and Grammy winner Tariq Trotter as Soul, who along with his real-life band, Roots, are rising stars on the hip-hop scene. Sarah, played by the beautiful and poised Karen Goberman, is involved with actor David Vadine as Judah, a leader of the vigilante Jewish Defense League, whose running battle with some local blacks has escalated into violence.
You get respect through strength. It's the only way you get respect.
Sarah and Saul meet, falling into timeless love, eventually bringing out the expected voice of protest on behalf of the Jewish perspective against assimilation. Izzy's psyche took a direct hit when Brooklyn Babylon director Mark Levin passed on Izzy for the part of Sarah's father. Rejection destroyed Izzy's self-confidence as an actor, even though Izzy really felt that he had nailed the part in his audition.
I really wish that you would respect how I feel about this situation. This is my daughter, not your daughter. That's really
That's
the key
really not
point.
very fair.
And I don't like you pushing.
I don't like you saying that to me.
Well, I'm telling you that, and you better get that into your head right now.
You better get into your head that
Izzy was able to swallow his pride and cast his longtime colleague Simcha Gottlieb as Sarah's father. On the surface, Izzy appeared to have taken things in stride, but it would later come to light that he sabotaged the production repeatedly. This behind-the-scenes footage documents the fallout of Izzy's most brazen act when he closed down production with an anonymous call to the police, informing them of a bomb about to go off in the school where they were shooting. Still, Izzy managed to leave his imprint on Brooklyn Babylon. The film's Jewish scenes all had Izzy's unmistakable touch, not to mention frequent on-camera appearances. One example is the wedding ceremony, in which Izzy consoled himself by portraying the presiding rabbi under the wedding canopy.
With the help of Izzy, just to make this correct, it's going to play back the music, and we're going to see what it looks like.
Izzy's choreography for the wedding party was a tremendous success, with Izzy stealing the scene with his famous Up Your Beard dance. The afternoon prayer scene captured the meditative aspects of Jewish life.
You know that Izzy's not in this. I can go back one step. Oh, we'll move Izzy.
Mark Levin made sure that Izzy's contributions to this scene were not overlooked and requested that Izzy be placed front and center in an effort to soothe his ruffled feathers. The production became so reliant on Izzy's many talents that he ended up serving as the film's de facto music supervisor, which allowed him to offer roles to several old friends. Brooklyn Babylon reunited Izzy with cantorial virtuoso Leibel Blasovsky, who first appeared in The Return. For Izzy, Brooklyn Babylon was the fulfillment of a promise he had made to Leibel 20 years earlier, and that promise was to cast the cantorially brilliant Blasovsky in another film. Of all his contributions to the film, however, Izzy was most proud of the Sabbath table scene.
It's very apropos because I'm afraid this car bombing thing could go down that same road.
Abba, the Torah also tells us the story of Shimon and Levi, who, when their sister was brutally raped, took revenge.
We should both be together, understanding each other. We've both been slaves. We've both experienced genocide.
If someone was coming to kill you, do you lie in wait? Or do you wake up early and strike first?
Izzy knew it was over. After years of high-profile character work and hobnobbing with established directors, Izzy was back to being just another Jewish face in the crowd. In Keeping the Faith, Ed Norton's directorial debut, Izzy had hoped to advise Ben Stiller, who plays a hip young rabbi. Instead, he appears only fleetingly as, of all things, a trading card.
Got it. Need it. Need it.
Not only was his professional career winding down, but he was becoming vilified in the Jewish community. It was interesting that the week Izzy began to realize this, he noticed that the scriptural reading that Sabbath was the scriptural reading from Deuteronomy called Shoftim, Judges, where it talks about the authority of the rabbis. And Izzy realized upon reading that it was necessary for him to acknowledge the authority of the rabbis by apologizing for his career, by apologizing for all of his mistakes, by rectifying the wrongs. And he actually went out and in a moment of absolute abject repentance decided to burn and destroy the archives of the Hassidic.